Now, how do we dive right in? I would suggest let's start by making sure that this attack button does something, that we actually shrink these health bars. Now, as I mentioned, we need to configure how much health is available, and later we'll ask the user of this web page for a starting value. For now, we will hard code it. So here in app.js, I will start by adding a constant, which I'll name chosen max life. Again, later the user will be able to choose that, hence that variable name. Right now, I will hard code it, and I will set it to 100 health points. Now, in addition, I'll also set an attack value here. Now, this also is a constant because this will not change throughout the program lifecycle. By the way, the health, of course, will change. So this actually should be a variable with let. My mistake. So this should be a variable. The constant here, however, will not change. And the order, by the way, does not matter. You could have the variable first, whatever you want. But I like to have my constants that never change first. And the constant here which won't change is the attack value, which I'll set to 10. And of course here you can experiment with different values. This is basically how hard we hit the monster, though I will say in the vendor.js file, we got a little randomization logic built in so that the attack value I set up here will actually be treated as a maximum value, and we will generate a random value between 0 and that value to have a little bit of randomness in the game. Now, also one little thing which I want to change here. Attack value is a constant which will never change throughout the entire program. Therefore, it's a constant, as I just said. We can also leave it like this, but for such a global game value, which we really hard code in there, so which we don't derive from, let's say, some user input, which thereafter never changes, but which we as a developer set up as a global value which you just hard code into your code, it's also quite common to use all uppercase characters there and separate words with an underscore to make it really clear that this is a global value which you just hard coded into the code as we did it here. It's not required. Technically, it doesn't make any difference. It's just a convention you see in some programs, and therefore one which I want to establish here. Again, not a must use, but an option. So that's the attack value, the maximum attack value we can get as a player. That's the max life for both the player and the monster. And the first thing we can do, therefore, is we can call a function which is exposed by vendor.js, the adjust health bars function, which takes the maximum life and which then just sets the maximum life in our user interface, so in the HTML code in the end for these progress bars. So here we can call adjust health bars and simply forward the chosen max life so that this gets updated on the screen whenever we load this game. Of course, we see no difference here. The bars were full before that, but if you inspect them actually with right-click inspect here in Chrome, you see the HTML code as it's configured for this running web page, and there you see the max value is set to 100. The current value is also set to 100, and if you would change the chosen max life here to 50 and reload, you would see that these values also change to 50. So that's the impact we're having here, just so that you see how this all is connected. Okay, so with that, we got the chosen max life set up. We're setting this in our web page, so to say. Now we want to connect this attack button here to a function which we execute, which then lowers this health. So for that, in the vendor.js file, we expose this attack button. That's a constant which we can use. By the way, these constants are not written in all caps because these don't hold hard-coded string or number values, but instead references to parts of our HTML code, so parts of our web page. And there, this is not such a global hard-coded value, but it's a bit more dynamic, even though it, of course, also won't change whilst the app is running. So we can refer to the attack button constant here, which is basically a reference to this button. And we can use this here to then also add an event listener here. And this event listener should listen to the click event and then fire a function, which I'll add here, which I'll name attack handler. And now the name of the function is totally up to you. Previously in the course, I used a different naming scheme. Now, from now on, I will use a different one where the functions which I assign to event handlers will always be named some description of what the function is there for, and then handler at the end. This is absolutely not a must do. It's also not the only convention you will find out there. Some people also use a convention where these event handler functions start with on, and then, for example, on click or on attack. Or you just name it attack monster if you want to go with that, just to make clear which functions are attached to an event listener and which functions aren't. I will go with that attack handler or with that handler convention here, but again, that is optional. So attack handler is the function I'll point at here on my event listener, and in this function I now want to launch an attack towards that monster. Now, to launch that attack, we can have a look at the vendor.js file, and there we actually have that deal monster damage function. What this does is it calculates a random amount of damage based on the damage we feed in as a parameter. Then it adjusts the monster health bar, so the health bar we see on the page here, and it returns the damage it calculated, so that we can also use it in the app.js file. So I want to call deal monster damage here, and I want to pass in my attack value here. And this will return the damage that was dealt, which I'll store in a damage constant, because this value will not change for this function execution. So I will store it in this local constant, which is available inside of this function thereafter. And now we can use that stored damage to adjust our monster health. Now for that, up here, I'll add a new variable, monster health, or current monster health, which I'll set equal to chosen max life, which of course renders this variable a bit redundant. It will become more important later once we let the user set this. For now, it's just like a dummy data container. We could of course also initialize current monster health to 100 here. But again, since later this variable will be populated by the user, I'll use that extra variable. And the current player health can also be initialized to the chosen max life. Now that current monster health should be reduced by the damage which was dealt down there. And for this, of course, we can use the minus equal operator and set this to damage. This means that current monster health is set equal to current monster health minus damage. Now, the UI is updated by the deal monster damage function, as I explained. And with that, we should be able to attack the monster with a normal attack. If I save this and I reload and I click attack, you see the monster health bar shrinks by different amounts because it's random, but it shrinks. Of course, we have no win condition though. So it would make sense to add this, and therefore, of course, we'll need an if statement.